Yeah, yeah, and being up at the carvings, it's just so nice. Like I always have that different sounds in the water. Even walking up there, like the little streams, I always try to make them have that different sound that comes in there. From the different than the main river, right? It's, I think sound has a lot to do with feelings too, eh? It might be just a thought, anyhow. I know I can sit beside a stream and get lots of different sounds. Can't sing, so what the heck?
Right.
Yeah.
From where you are, Ista instantly within yourself, see beacon forming a star, Sin Halokla, the shining sun. So it talks about in the song is to always look on in life from where you are and not to dwell on your past and think days were brighter and maybe days were darker, but the only way to look at your past is to look within yourself and form those memories into something shining like a star. Let them shine forward like the shining sun. That a simple smile could change a person's day. Hello, how are you could lift a person's day.
on the whole thing, and as you can tell, this has been shifted one way or the other. It's almost like a set of steps, eh? But over the years, well, probably 34 or 33 years ago, I started noticing this one. But if you look at it, there's a handprint here. And them handprints are actually all over the carvings up further. Not over the first set, but when you get right to the far one, there's quite a few of these on it. So I came to the idea of thinking that that's like a rebirth sign. I've talked to lots of spiritual people and the medicine people, and they said, yeah, that's what that is. It's even in other countries, like that's what they say, that's like a rebirth. And so I always look at this one as a rebirth of the sacred circle. Or, you know, coming back to a time when things are back in tune. So I'm going to tell you about this one, because this one here I uncovered 7 years ago. And here I know you're looking for a carving, but it was mud here. And so I scraped it all off, and I realized this is all that pure white sandstone, and this is granite. So at the very far carving, this one will tie in with that. And when it was first shown, there was these little rocks, and it was like the hand was sitting right down here. There was these little rocks. Kind of like a baby being born, eh? Starting to be born, like that would be the forehead or the top of the head.
Oh, wow.
So this, like I say, is a little over 7 years ago this started showing up. Stories up there. But if you look over here, there's a herald. Now the herald was a real important person back in the day, because they didn't have telephones and all these sort of things, so they had to have heralds, and they used to go, like if they had a potlatch or a new baby was born or a death, potlatches, all these sort of things. This person would go out and announce all that, that hey, you come to our potlatch, and we're gonna, because everything was done verbally, so you'd watch it and you would be a witness of what was happening. So like I say, the herald was important, but it also comes out on the dance floor just before the thunder, and it calls to each 4 different directions, saying, come witness this most important dance that we have. So this one here is calling to the north, and if you ever around the pipe ceremony or smudging or anything like that, the north is always looked at as being thankful for those that have gone on before us, all the old ones and the old ones, right? And so the north has always been a storage space of the wisdom and all that stuff that's all through the years. And that wisdom doesn't go anywhere, it's always there. And people can call on that. Like if you have a question of, you know, great importance or anything, if you ask it and be sincere about it, it'll actually give you the question or the answer for it. So it's quite amazing how it all works. But like I say, you need to know the question. Okay, there's only one carving actually that's done on granite. And granite's a lot like that big rock there, that's granite. So they used the shape of this rock actually and put 2 eyes and a mouth on it. And if you look at it, it's the shape of a frog. And it's like this. There's the front legs this way, the back leg over there, and this is the back of the frog. The frog is it's a prime example of rebirth, because it has the egg, it's in the water, and it has a little tadpole. And next thing you know, it has a frog which jumps up on the land and becomes a land thing. So it's a real good example of, you know, how we go through life, and a lot of times we'll be hurt, so we kind of keep ourselves back in that hurt. Like it's really hard to sometimes get out of that. But a frog is a real good example of, it can look back, but it can't hop back. So it's always going forward, right? And so it's just a good way of saying, like, pay attention today. It's the most important part of your life. It's today, always today. It's a story about how Raven, there's Raven, see the two wings and the head, went to the heaven above. And the reason he went to the heaven above is because everything was copper tone, like there was nothing, like it was cold, it was smoky, like, so it was, they call it copper tone. Chris's name is Howie Seuss, which is the color of copper. And Lance he's the other twin, he's the raven, representing the raven, Kokonai. So anyhow, he went to the heaven above because the people were cold and it was hard to live back then. So that, it's also relating a time. But Raven went to the heaven above and he said, hey, Creator, we need some sun down there because we're cold. All our people are cold. Great Spirit said, no, you can't do that because this is too important. So he wanted to keep it up on a shelf. So he kind of was flying around thinking a bit, and he noticed the Creator's daughter, Skimina, would always go down to this little pond. And so she'd take from that water and drink from it. Every day she would do that. He got, okay, I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm a shapeshifter. So he started shaping himself into different things. One was the eagle down, that was the first one. So she just blew it away and drank the water. And she did two other things. I'm not going to go into the whole story because that's not my job to tell stories that way. So if you want to hear the whole story, you have to go to like a potlatch or get it from somewhere else. But anyhow, he ended up changing, the last one he changed into a spruce needle, dropped in the water, and he murked the water up. So Skimina came along and she dipped from the water and drank it. And she swallowed that spruce needle and she became pregnant. So it was kind of like, wow, okay. So she went and told her father, hey, feels like I'm carrying a child. Of course, the Creator was pretty mad because it's kind of like, well, who's the father? But anyhow, they got over that. And next thing you know, Raven, being the trickster, he was a baby. And the Creator became very, wanting to spoil this child because it was his only grandson, right? And so, anyhow, the Raven, he kept asking for that son. Please, can I have it? So finally, the Creator said, okay. So he made sure everything was plugged in his longhouse so that son wouldn't escape. And so he let the baby play with it, and the baby was batting it back and forth, kind of, and kind of being rough with it. And the Creator said, "Be careful, like you're gonna break it." And so Raven, he kind of looked up and he thought, "Oh, there's a hole up there in the roof." So he batted it up against the wall a couple of times, and boom, it broke. Out came that sun, and it broke up through this hole in the wall in the ceiling. Raven, the baby, turned himself back into the raven, the bird, and flew back towards the heaven from the heaven back down to the earth. And so he followed that sun halfway between the heaven and the earth, and that's where the sun is today. So that goes to a time when things were still smoky here. So the first destruction of the world was destroyed by fire, volcanoes, all that sort of stuff. So that's what created that Howie Seuss, that color of copper. So that's going back, well, more than 10,000 years, because the Ice Age was around 10,000 years. So these stories relate back over 10,000 years ago. This rock was done during the Ice Age, which is up further, but they came back here because they remembered that story and wrote this down so they would remember. And that's why I say this is a rebirth, telling you of times gone past. At that time it was predictions. Now it's stories of things that have happened. So yeah, as we carry on up the way here, this here I always feel is kind of like where the first people landed. I don't know whether you ever heard the story when Lawrence was, his story was always our first people didn't migrate here. We came directly on the eyelashes of the sun to here. And so that's the start of the first people right there. This one's getting a little faded out. But before this structure was here, a lot of people would climb up there and go that way. So it's a very soft sandstone. It's pure white if you scrub it. So it's, well, I think ever since I started coming up here, it was all covered in moss back in them times, but and you'd see people would scratch it with whatever. And so I always tried to make it so it's a combination of the light and the dark, so it makes things stand out. So like I say, that's the first people, the star people. So this would be like when you land, or anybody, you know, coming into a new place, and it's kind of like, it's new to you, it's, well, what do we do now? And so if you look at these faces, it has that similar look, kind of like, yeah. What do we do, right? So a lot of these stories are back at that beginning of time. So there's the snake. And over here is just a face. You go, well, what the heck, what's that? Well, if you look at this whole rock, that's what it is. And back in the beginning, we knew we were part of everything. Part of the water, and even today, like, you're part of what, 80% of water? I'm not that up on education, but I know you're a lot of water, so we're a big part of water. We're part of the forest, we're part of everything. So this is showing that this is spirit of that rock, which we are part of. These here ones are kind of like a newer carving, because you can tell it's been chipped. And the older ones are kind of like, they're wider, right? And they're smooth.
Yeah, they're very smooth.
So I believe that these were done, a lot of the older carvings were done when this rock was still soft. And during the Ice Age, this rock was made by the glaciers rubbing over the top of granite, which actually makes the sandstone. Like the black stuff would always fall through, and this is what I've been told anyhow by people coming, oh yeah, well that makes sense, right? So again, these carvings here were actually told from where the Ice Age starts. So they came back here and wrote this down of, hey, this is the way it was back in the beginning. If you look at this, it's kind of like a little water beetle or something. You see the legs and then the tentacles. This here's like an eagle upside down, so it's got the two eyes and the beak. But you can tell this is older, or newer. But see that it's kind of like an eagle head here. And it's like either a sun or some kind of a design here on the breast of the bird. And there's the wings, two wings. So it's like I say, done at a earlier time or later time, I guess. See, even this carving, this was done with somebody fooling around, right? Some say it looks like a seal, but again, it's no way of telling how old that is because it's fairly new. It's like done with a knife or something sharp. So yeah, it's been interesting. Like I say, these whole, when we put this framework in here, this was probably about 3 years ago. Before we used to have to walk way down under there, and then we used to have to walk up on the roots, which was really quite dangerous because it was slippery. And so we built this to make it a lot easier so we could see the carvings and everything without being so dangerous. This one over here is kind of neat because it's, well, I'm still working on it and it's still trying to tell me. But if you notice, there's two eyes there.
Like two eyes in the
Two
mouth?
eyes right here in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
Now this arm here, see the arm?
Yeah.
It's holding the tummy. Well, the tummy is a very important part, but also so is the hand.
Yeah.
A lot of our, so this arm over here, it's held by, like it's holding a basket.
Yeah.
And there's 5 fingers underneath it, which would be like basket like this, it's like we're here to actually fill that basket with knowledge, right?
Oh,
So that's kind of a neat one.
yeah, that is really nice.
Yeah. This one here, it's kind of neat. Want to tell that story? No? Haven't heard it enough yet, eh? This carving, when I first noticed it, it's different than the star people. If you notice that it has a chin, so it's way different than the star people, right? Because in fact, you can see it just above that bridge. It's also a star person. So it'd be like this here and here. It has 6 of these dots up above it, and then it's got 1 dot here, which is 7. So I realized like there's a shaman up ahead, and that meant like 12 families. This here means like 7 families. And I also realized it has a beak. So it's like a bird, but it also looks like a water bird kind of to me. So I was kind of like, oh, what's that, kind of about. But I know that kind of went on for 2 or 3 years, and finally one time I came up and something told me, look at the whole picture, it was, so I did, and I realized that this whole thing, if you look at the whole thing, it's like there's the beak and there's the head, the same as that. So it'd be like, and then the necklace of a loon. The breast of the bird comes down here to the tail. Then it has the back wing, so it's kind of like laying its head on the back, right?
Oh, okay.
Then there's the other wing, and there's the water. So it's actually a water bird, which is how I came across it being a loon.
Oh, wow.
So like I say, some of these stories have taken like 7, 8 years. There's one over on the bridge there that's taken over 20 years to tell me the whole story. So it's just been an ongoing lesson for me. But to me, it's been great because I haven't been able to read.
Yeah.
So to me, that's why it's so important to me. I love being up here because I can understand, I can read it the way I read it, right? I'm not saying that this is the gospel truth or anything. This is just my story. So this one here ties it together with them two over there. If you look at this one here, see how it's 2 hands?
Yeah.
It's like 2 hands, right? So the way I started seeing this one, I just saw that to begin with. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was a water bug or something. But if you look at it, there's the star people. And when the 2 of them came together, them and here, they ended up with a chin. So that ended up, well, quite a spiritual change, because all of a sudden you got people from there and then people from the water. So it's just like a husband and wife. You have you have kids. It's a change. It's not your spirit is trying to become 2, right? From the 2. So this here kind of represents to me the Ice Age. They were very happy, these people. You can't mistake that for being happy or sad, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at how happy they were during the Ice Age, they claim that a lot of the Ice Age was over 2 miles high. So a lot of this earth was pushed down. So it's actually came back up since the ice is gone, but the water used to be just by the edge here. That's how high the water was. So the way this reads back here, when the Ice Age happened, a lot of them left here because, well, it would be instant death, right? How are you going to live in the Ice Age? So that made the water go down for one, but it also, like I say, it created this big change. So the way I see it is a big body of them, like they came in head first,
And that's the way this story tells it. They come in head first. And there's the head over there. They came in head first. So during this ice age, a big body of them left again, went back out to the water. Doesn't say where they went. It doesn't say where they come from. All it says is a people, the way I read it, that came in from the water. So it's just a people came in from the water. And obviously they fell in love, and even some stories actually that I'll be talking about later, they actually fell in love and became a close companion. So this is kind of a neat story because they were happy, but a lot of them died. See how spirit's coming out of the head? Spirit's one thing that, like, the body can die, and I don't even like calling it die because it carries on too. It changes into, well, back into the earth or whatever, but it still helps things grow, right?
Yeah.
So spirit came out of this head. It turns back into pure spirit. Again, like that other face back there, see how it becomes part of everything? Then it turns into a baby, like a seed, like a egg. And over here, there's a baby footprint. See, you can see the heel. There's that part right in between the toes, and there's the toes. It's a little hard to see right now, but it's there. So a lot of it's, all these babies, like this is a rebirth again. Like I say, we came into the ice age, but we also came out. And so a lot of the stories always say, well, we came into the ice age, but they never say what happened after. Then all of a sudden we had a flood.
Yeah.
But what did we do after? You know, we're obviously still here.
Yeah.
You know, so it's this one over here, like we're moving along through time. So we started off with the fire, the ice age, then we come to the flood. This again is like, see how that big chin? So this is coming into the ice age part, or I mean the flood time. And then there's a spirit, one of the first people up here, upside down. If you look over on the face over here, right here, like there's two eyes and a mouth, and then there's this body up above it. It's like a 3D, eh? Anyhow, it turns into a mosquito, so it's like one of them little larvae. But it also has an egg up here and the sunshine up here. There it is, the sunshine just came out. So it turns into a mosquito, so it's similar to a story as the frog. And the frog, it went through three things, right? It had the egg, then it had the tadpole, then it had the frog. This one here, from the egg, it turns into this. Then it turns into the mosquito. And the mosquito is there, like the two eyes. There's the stinger. There's the one leg, the other leg, the back leg, the other back leg. So this is the body. So the amazing thing about this is, and I think it's kind of funny, but when you really stop and think about it, it's very true that we're part of everything. And a mosquito doesn't stop by being a mosquito. It comes and stings you, takes your blood, your DNA, and has its young. So next time you get bit, you could be getting bit by one of your own kids. Anyhow, that's just a little thing I had to throw in there. But anyhow, it's just a good way of showing us that, hey, we're not any different. We're all part of what is here. This one here is kind of neat because it comes through a time of here is called, I always call it like the time of smallpox, residential school, TB, all these sort of things are squashed into this little bit. So like we came out of the flood, and then they had to go right into this, whatever you want to call it, you know, being all these sicknesses, and then, like I say, the residential school. Anyhow, after the smallpox, there was only roughly 300 people left out of 10,000. That's Marcus's family. So when you stop and think about how all of a sudden from 10,000 people down to, people were just crawling off into the bush and dying because, I mean, there wasn't enough people around to bury them. It was just, you just crawled off in the bush and died. So what's happening is this line here is a good way of saying, okay, we're coming out of that. We're going through all that healing and all these sort of things. And starting of the education was a big part of that. And back in when I first came here, for one, but even just a bit before that, the elders realized that we're losing our identity. We're losing our language, our songs, our dances, and everything. And we've just been pounded into the dirt, and you know, like it was just a genocide. And well, even the governments are admitting that now. But when you stop and think about how coming out of that, how do you get out of that? And that's been a real tough one because of, they destroyed the language. If you were caught speaking the language, you were beat. So during that school time, they came out of that other thing, learning all of a sudden, oh, we got to learn this because this is the religion and this is the best. We know best, right? So all of a sudden here we are as a people trying to figure out where we're going to go. So after here, this shows up on the very top, there's a owl, which is wisdom, also going to the north, but it's always like Great Spirit, you know. It's what is the answer? There's a shaman there. See that 11 dots up above it? There's 11 dints. And then there's one in the forehead. And right now, through all the education and the dancing and the language and all that stuff's all starting to come back. All the potlatches are starting to come back. All that feeling of love one another instead of like destroying one another. There's still, you know, things going on, but this is saying with a happy face to this face down here that we're going to come out of this and we're going to be a way stronger. That's what that's saying. And so we're coming out of that. Like you take even the young ones now coming out of school, they're coming out so they can speak their own language. So they're becoming proud of themselves, and that's important because that's who we are, everybody is. So this here is actually saying, this eagle here, see the top wings? And there's the tail, the beak, and the head. There's the claws, and it's holding onto an egg. But it's also carrying a baby. And again, that baby is going that way. So it's a rebirth. It's coming back to a time when everything's going to start changing for the good. So it's amazing, like, and it's nice to see, like, you even take, it's not just here in the valley, the changes that are happening. People are becoming, you can't do this no more. You can't destroy this world. And because this is the mother, and you can't, you destroy that, you destroy everybody on it, you know. And so everybody has to pull together and come together and realize that. Of course, it seems like we're having a heck of a time with some of the governments today, but you know, that'll all change. And so this is like anything, this rebirth. It has two ways to go. It can either go to the good, or somebody can drop a bomb, or, you know, like I say, a lot of different things can happen, or a big catastrophe. But in any case, we're going to come out the other side. And so that's really what this is all about. And this is where we are right today, as we're standing here talking. This is all about this. So that's pretty well it about this part of the carvings, because the rest of the carvings actually are really what's happened to me in the last 35 years, a lot of it. So it's a lot of that, talking about that egg back at the beginning and all that sort of stuff. So. Fancy steps, eh?
So did somebody show you these, or did you found them?
Yeah. See, I've never been able to read, so to me, it's as I've worked on them, it's not like I got the story all at once. It's taken time, just a bit at a time. It's like a never-ending story, I guess you'd call it. And yeah, so to me, it's been really close to my heart, because when I seen people starting to scratch on them and stuff like that, I thought, no, that can't happen.
Yeah.
So.
So then you just like found a couple rocks and then
Well, what happened was when they were logging, they actually logged up to here. They're not, and then the faller realized, hey, there's carvings here. So after he did that, the archaeologist came in here just before I did, and they had these carvings that you see, just spotless. They were pure white because they were taking copies of it all.
Yeah.
And their guesstimation was maybe 7,000 years. The guesstimation, right?
Yeah.
There was no way of carbon dating it. So that's all it was, is a guesstimation. And so the way I see it is, you got to go by all of a sudden realizing that there's times, like there's the fire, there's the ice age. So if you take the ice age, that was over 10,000 years. So how can this be all of a sudden it's only 7,000 years? You lost 3,000 years along, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's where I get my time from, is that. And the flood, I don't know how many years ago that was.
So
And
then,
then
did somebody show you what each carving meant, or you kind of did your own research?
it's been all through me just thinking, being here by myself. And,
Thinking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
kind of, knowing.
yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, so it's, like I say, it's been super for me. It's just a spiritual uplifting, I guess, in a lot of ways. But I mean, I was still working here all the time, and like running an excavator and that. And I did a lot of excavating around, but I always found time to come here and keep these clean, and it's something that I love doing.
Do you know what they carved them with? Like, have you kind of figured that out yet, or not really?
Well, like I was showing you earlier, how some of the more recent ones were like kind of rough and chippy.
Yeah.
If you look at these, see how
They're so
how
smooth.
big and smooth they are? That one down there has been kind of added to, like it's been sharpened up because it was probably fading. So but you can see the wider lines still there.
Yeah.
But these ones down here, it's wider lines too. And this one's part half and half, the same as up there. So somebody at one time, whether it be 1,000 years or 2,000 years ago, dressed it up a bit. But if you think about it, this rock, when the Ice Age left, this stuff would be like
Like
plasticine or
clay?
putty.
Oh. Oh,
Could be
wow.
soft, right?
Yeah, it'd be super soft.
So all you have to do is use your finger.
Yeah.
So
It's about the size of somebody's finger.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they say, well, it must have taken a lot of people. I don't think so. I think maybe 2 or 3 spiritual people actually looked after this whole area.
Yeah.
And
just,
as long as they had, well, I'll show you more up at the top carving here, but really back then, nothing was right or wrong.
yeah.
It was all a matter of difference. So all you had to do is keep in balance, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like,
Yeah. You're wrong.
yeah. So it was strictly just, like I say, it wasn't a religion.
Yeah.
It was just a spirituality, and so it only took, well, even a shaman up here to pay attention to that and keep that balance going, because that one dot ties into every one of them dots.
Yeah.
And you can take any one of them dots, ties into all the other dots. So the shaman is no different than any of the other dots. It's all equal. The shaman had its thing to do, and keeping things in balance.
Yeah.
The hunters had to hunt. They fed the shaman.
Yeah.
They looked after the shaman or the people here, the spiritual people. So if there was a handful of people or 2 or 3 people, that's all it would take. And believe it or not, as you'll see some of these stories up here, as I've been going through my time here, it creates changes downtown.
Oh, really?
So it just takes that awakening, what I'm seeing. And so I figure I was brought here to do this, to waken it up. And as I'm doing that, things are changing.
Yeah.
So.
I taught for 10 years at our school, and what I found that went a long ways was a thank you. Well, thank you for helping with the singing, powerful singer. Thank you for helping with the dancing, beautiful dancing. There's kids that come out of their mask and say, how did I look? How did I do? They just want to know that they're doing a good job and that they might be dancing it correctly. For that was my wishes growing up in my culture, was to dance it right, whatever that was, trying to please everybody, which you can't. Learning off of ends of fingers at times from my elders. Why are you doing it that way? You should be doing it this way. And we tried to bring a different method to teaching, because that method wouldn't go very far in the school today, so it was like an open hand. This is what I know, whether you want to take it, for me or not, it's up to you. But it was also they taught me just as much as I taught them.